When you think of Piemonte, what do you think of? Rolling foothills with beautiful castles, luxurious gastronomic delights like the fabled white truffle, as rare and as precious as gemstones? Or do you think of the king of wines, Barolo, made from the famed Nebbiolo? But there is so much more to Piemonte than just Nebbiolo. From the aromatic, fragrant Moscato to the juicy, bouncy Barbera. Come with me and let's taste Piemonte and discover Barolo and beyond. Strategically located in Italy's northwest and bordering Switzerland and France, the region of Piemonte, which in Italian means foot of the mountain, has been a prime target for invasions. For this reason, its beautiful rolling hills are dotted with castles big and small. The scenery is gorgeous, but what really attracts visitors is the outstanding wine and food. From the delicate and aromatic white truffles to handmade pasta, it's a veritable gastronomic paradise. The classic pairing is Italy's king of wines, Barolo, but the king's court is filled with many other delicious wines. Let's begin our wine journey to Piemonte by visiting one of the region's oldest winemaking families and tasting the wines of Cordero di Montezemolo. I hear, Alberto, that your family has been involved in this area for over 700 years?
Yes, this land belongs to our family since the 1340. So basically it's almost 700 years that Cordero di Montezemolo family, my family own this beautiful property in La Morra village in the center of the Barolo area.
And of course, this area has always been famous for wine, but has your family always been in the wine trade, or is it something new to them?
Yes and not. I mean, the family, luckily for us, has been a noble family for many centuries, connected to the royal family, because it was mostly involved in army and diplomatic things. So we used to farm in this hill, mostly vineyards, so it was already with a very high reputation for viticulture and winemaking, but not only. So also cereal, apples, peaches, breeding animals and so on. But it's only in the last century, after Second World War, that my grandfather really started to make an approach a little bit more modern and professional to this kind of business.
What do you think, for you, makes Barolo so special?
But first of all, you can see behind us the view, it's amazing. So it's a very unique area where the microclimate and the soil composition is quite unique. And Nebbiolo, in these particular conditions, it's really unique too. I mean, gives you some specific profile of the wine in terms of tasting, nose, and so on, which is very hard to duplicate in other parts, even just a few kilometers away from where we are.
I know that this area, besides the famous Barolo grape Nebbiolo, it also grows a lot of other grapes. Is that to do with the topography and the way that the vineyards are located?
It's a mix of topography and also just the history and the evolution of the land. So many different varieties have been produced and used in Piemonte in many different parts of the region. Probably the three most important ones for sure, Nebbiolo, and then Barbera and Dolcetto, the three main red. But next to this, we also have many other small production made with more boutique varietals, which are many, exactly.
So it's funny because this area you think of as Barolo, but actually can include a lot of diversity of wines within it?
Absolutely, because traditionally the area used to make wine with only one single grape. So compared to other areas like Tuscany or Bordeaux, for example, where the tradition is blending multiple varieties, Cabernet, Merlot, Syrah, Petit Verdot, etc., etc. For us, every single variety typically expresses its best characteristic when it's alone and is only coming from a specific part. So that's why every single variety at the end found their specific place where you get the best condition by one.
Now, I've heard that your vineyards are all organic. Could you tell me a bit about how you've done that? Is it common in Barolo?
I have to say yes, the sustainability of the environment and farming is quite popular in the area, so we are not the only one, but for sure for us it has been always a very important aspect of farming. So eliminating everything which is not natural and chemical, but trying to make a more natural balance of all the elements involved in the vineyard is an important point of view.
So I'm very excited to taste some of these wines, and I see this one has a beautiful color.
Yes, you're right. Barbera, like Dolcetto, these are our two most colored grape varieties, extremely different, for example, from Nebbiolo, which is much lighter and more delicate, although has a very beautiful color. So extremely dark, and characteristic of Barbera d'Alba is to have a very intense nose of fruity, spicy notes, but very, very light in tannins.
It's got a beautiful nose. It's so rich, lovely fruit sort of coming out of that.
Traditionally, Barbera d'Alba is our daily wine, the one you have for every kind of dishes, any kind of moments, is extremely good for any occasion.
I love Barbera. I think that not enough people enjoy it because they're always chasing over, you know, the Nebbiolo, but for me, Barbera is such an everyday pleasure.
Exactly.
It's the kind of, in China, I can imagine having this with a big dish of noodles. What would you have it with here?
Vitello tonnato, which is very classic, carne cruda, or other vegetables, starters, or lasagna. Whenever you want to eat, actually, at the end works pretty well.
Because I think what's lovely about this is that it's so easy to drink. It's so smooth. It's so gorgeous and sort of rounded.
Exactly. Acidity is very high, typically in Barbera, which is something very good to keep the wine very fresh, because typically also sugar concentration is high, and so alcohol level is typically pretty intense. But this acidity makes a good balance, and then has a very smooth and delicate tannins. That's why this wine is aged only for a few months in oak, just to give them some more rounded tannins, a little bit more body, in order to make everything more balanced.
But again, here you really taste that grape through, don't you? That beautiful, healthy grape. Well, I really hope people in China drink more Barbera, because I think it's so charming, isn't it?
It is.
But we have to go to this more serious baby, don't we?
Yes.
The big brother.
Yes. The second wine is Langhe Nebbiolo, which is also a very interesting appellation for the area, because Barolo is the king, like Barbaresco is the queen, so the two main production, or the two main appellation based on Nebbiolo grape. Langhe Nebbiolo is the general appellation for the entire area. That means that vineyards can be a little bit more spread around, you can mix them, and there isn't a specific law about aging, so producers are a little bit more free to interpret the wine as they wish.
So could we say, I mean, let's parallel it to Burgundy.
Yes.
So we have the Burgundy larger areas, and then we have the villages. Would you say it's a similar idea?
Yeah, it's a similar idea. So Barolo is like more like the Premier and Grand Cru style, while this is more like a village or big areas like Haute Côte de Beaune or these kind of areas like this.
So you can see that the color is quite a bit paler
than
the Barbera. Is this for you a classic Nebbiolo expression?
It is. A very easy way to distinguish Barbera and Nebbiolo is simply looking the two different glasses side by side. The color is extremely different. Barbera dark and intense, very deep, while Nebbiolo is light and delicate. If you compare to Pinot Noir, you can have an idea. And this is so a super classic color of the Nebbiolo, but the light you have is very beautiful, and the intensity of the nose and the tannins is definitely stronger and more complex than a Barbera.
Well, what I like about this is that it's got that lovely fragrance, and what you can really taste is that Nebbiolo purity coming through.
Absolutely, because with this wine, our idea is to give to our consumer a very precise idea of what the grape Nebbiolo is, while with the Barolo, you get a more terroir expression. So is the grape plus the different aspects of the tradition of the Nebbiolo in a certain position, the vintage, the aging, the philosophy of producers, and so on.
Well, now I'm very excited to try the Barolo.
Absolutely.
So we have this one.
So this is the new vintage 2015, is Barolo Monfalletto. Monfalletto is the historical name of our property.
Where we're sitting now is...
We are sitting in the center of the Monfalletto hill. So this is the classic way to make Barolo that blends multiple parcels, which are all picked, harvested, vinified, aged separately, but then at the end they are all blended together to make one unique cuvée.
So you're blending to get the wine into a more perfect state, to get a better balance, more expressiveness?
There are two ways to make Barolo basically in the era. One way we call a little bit more classic is this one, where you blend multiple parcels with different characteristics, a little bit more spicy, a little bit more fruity, more tannic, less tannic, all together make a more unique wine.
Juggling to make the perfect wine out of the expression.
The other way to make Barolo is following the single vineyard system, a little bit more similar to Burgundy, where every single part, which are very peculiar, very unique and particular because of the soil composition, the terroir expression and microclimate, you vinify the wine alone, but you also bottle the wine itself without any other influence of other vineyards. So we also produce this wine, and we have two other labels. But let's say that this is our main production, the historical one, the most representative, because it's the important wine we always produce since ever.
So this is the blend of all the vineyards to create the balanced Barolo?
Exactly. It's typically our most accessible, approachable Barolo on the three Barolo that we produce, because the soil where we work on is typically a little bit more sandy, and so give us the opportunity to make a Barolo much more feminine, much more delicate. When it's young, is extremely approachable. Typically Barolo is quite intense and tight, so that's why you need more time, quiet in the cellar before opening bottles. But this is not the typical, I mean, it's one face of the Barolo. Not all Barolos are like this. We are in a part of the era which is a little bit opposite to that. So our Barolo have a great aging potential, but beside that, they are much more gentle and delicate in the young stages. That's why they are very approachable also when they're only 4, 5, 6 years old.
What I really love about this wine is the perfume on it. It's just got layers and layers of complex perfume. When I smell the Langhe, it's much more direct.
Yes, you're right. I mean, when the Langhe express more the young, fresh fruits of Nebbiolo, such as strawberry, raspberry, cherry notes, so the typical red fruits of Nebbiolo and roses, the Barolo implement these flavors with also some spicy notes like some tobacco, lavender, white peach, licorice. So it goes from the floral to fruity and spicy notes.
Now, you were just saying that these wines that come from your winery are they can be drunk earlier, that they are more approachable. But how long for you do you think you can keep a Barolo?
Oh, we have bottles back to the 50s, 60s are absolutely fantastic and outstanding. And we talk about the great vintages. Now vintages are much more good consequently in a row. So we are even more lucky compared to the past to have extremely good vintages, one next to the other one. And typically, I believe, in my opinion, with my personal feeling, that a Barolo, when is in between 12, 15, 18 years old.
12, 15, 18, okay.
Yeah, but on the same time, again, I don't need to wait such a long time. Even when I have a Barolo which is only 6, 7, 8 years old, I'm very happy to have a great expression of Barolo. It can be my Barolo or even other side of these vineyards.
Piemonte's picturesque rolling hills provide a big clue explaining the diversity of grapes that are grown in the region. Montezemolo, for instance, plants the warmest sites with the fussy Nebbiolo and cooler with the easygoing Barbera. And even cooler spots like the high hills of Gavi can produce elegant white wines. Gavi is a region to the east of Barolo where the high-altitude hills provide the perfect growing conditions for the steely and elegant Cortese grape of the region. Known as the Chablis of Italy, few wineries can express this sophisticated grape quite as well as Villa Sparina. They produce all levels of Gavi from the classic all the way through to the single vineyard bottling of Monte Rotondo. And all in this unique bottle shape inspired by the ancient wine bottles of the area. And incidentally, these can all be enjoyed in Villa Sparina's famous wine resort, L'Ostigliere. But unfortunately, I couldn't go there. The wines came to me, so I am more than happy to taste their classic Gavi, which is famous in this area. As you can see, Gavi is classically not that pale. It's got a nice little lemon color, and when you smell it, wow, you get that lemon citrus bite. You can really understand why people call this a Chablis style wine. It's full of sort of racy, pebbly, stony notes. Lots of crisp citrus, a hint of almonds, and when you taste it, wow, it's got personality. It's also got elegance. On the palate, you get lots of lovely fruit and a beautiful fresh acidity. I really want to take this wine, go outside, sit in the sun, maybe have some oysters with it. Wow, it would be brilliant. And that's what makes Gavi fantastic. So if you've never tried Gavi before, go out and find some and give yourself a chance to taste this classic Piemonte white. But we're not done yet with whites from Piemonte. I had the chance to taste another Piemonte's white that I truly love with the blue-eyed prince of Moscato, Paolo Soracco. I have to say something, Paolo. I am so happy to be here because I am the world's biggest Moscato fan. And I drink Moscatos from everywhere in the world. But for me, there is something special about Moscato d'Asti. What is it about this area that makes it so special?
Noi abbiamo una combinazione di terreno, di microclima, di altitudine sul livello del mare unica, e per cui questo vitigno, il Moscato bianco, che è arrivato in questo territorio nel Medioevo, arriva dalla Palestina e è stato portato qui dai crociati e in 1000 anni si è perfettamente abituato, adattato a queste condizioni, al terreno che è ricco di sabbia, limo e molto calcareo, al microclima e all'altitudine. Siamo a 400 metri, quindi c'è molto sbalzo termico e quindi in 1000 anni, dal Medioevo ad oggi,
So long.
questa pianta si è naturalmente adattato alle nostre condizioni, e se io coltivo questo vitigno in un'altra zona del mondo non otterrò le stesse caratteristiche perché è abituato e vissuto per tanto tempo qui. Questa è la bella storia della...
Wow, that is an amazing history. So I never realized it was so long. And yet when we come here and we look at your winery, you know, when people think of wineries, they think of the chateaus or this, but look at this location. You're right in the heart of the village. Could you tell me something about how is this built like this?
Ma perché intanto questa è la casa della mia famiglia, quindi la mia cantina sorge sulla casa colonica, la casa agricola della mia famiglia, dove i miei nonni e i miei bisnonni sono nati e vissuti. In seguito, quando io ho finito la scuola enologica, ho pensato di adattare, attrezzare la mia cantina per un solo vino, il Moscato d'Asti, il Moscato.
Just one wine.
Perché il 95% di questa cantina è pensata per il Moscato, ok? E quindi è una cantina non tipicamente piemontese come le cantine che immaginiamo in Piemonte di vini rossi con il legno, con le botti di legno, le cantine interrate, eccetera. È molto tecnologica perché io lavoro con un vino molto delicato, aromatico e molto sensibile ai profumi, quindi ho bisogno di temperature controllate, contenitori di acciaio inossidabile, microfiltri, ma non per appiattire il prodotto o per fare in modo che diventi un prodotto industriale sempre uguale. semplicemente per cercare tutti gli anni, ogni vintage, di conservare al meglio le caratteristiche dell'uva che l'annata mi ha proposto. Quando tu vieni in una cantina di Moscato, pensata per il Moscato, è una sorpresa, perché non è la cantina, per esempio, del Barolo o della Barbera. Assolutamente è un mondo diverso.
Vorrei un bicchiere di Moscato.
With pleasure, con
我要
piacere.
喝一杯 Moscato，太棒了！
Enjoy.
This is a tasting where you have to drink it all, isn't it? Oh, look at that.
Benvenuto in Piemonte.
Cheers, salute. Oh, it's so fresh，那么新鲜的。我喝这样的 Moscato 让我感到激动死了，因为它充满了香气，而且这么新鲜。这样的酒越新鲜越好。
Beh, possiamo dire che nel Moscato cerchiamo in tutti i modi di cercare un equilibrio. Il Moscato non è un vino dolce, punto. È la ricerca di un equilibrio tra la dolcezza dello zucchero residuo, l'alcol, l'acidità e gli aromi. Deve essere tutto un insieme armonico. Quindi la difficoltà e il lavoro che noi facciamo è cercare di armonizzare tutte queste componenti.
Yeah, so you're really looking at the building blocks, the four parts of the wine that have to come together to make it a perfect glass.
Assolutely. La cosa importante non è la dolcezza, è l'equilibrio. Un Moscato non deve essere troppo dolce, non deve essere troppo secco, ma deve essere un equilibrio tra le due componenti. L'altro obiettivo che quando io faccio questo vino è conservare il profumo dell'uva, the smell grape, e portarlo in bottiglia.
And that for me is really important, almost a naked grape, you know? 对我来说，这样的酒真的代表的是他们的风土条件。为什么呢？因为这样的酒，你喝的就是那个葡萄的本身的风味儿，它没有什么化妆，它没有什么服装啊，这个就是那个麝香葡萄的本身的它的精神啊。 它的所有的身份就在这个瓶子里，所以我想做这样的酒其实是非常难啊，因为你不能用橡木桶，你不能用其他的酿造工艺来覆盖它的本身的质量。这样的酒，它们的所有的特色就在它的杯子里。I just really believe that these wines are incredibly important because you're not using oak. You're not using anything to cover the quality of the grape.
Yes.
So, can I ask you, Paolo, what would you pair with this kind of wine here in Italy?
Beh, in Italia noi per tradizione in Piemonte questo è il vino della festa, quindi pensato a fine pasto sul dolce, quindi con le torte, con la frutta fresca, le pesche, le fragole, con la frutta tropicale. Io adoro mango, mangiare mango e moscato. Lici, why not? Però io sono stato qualche volta in Cina e a me piace molto il cibo cinese e trovo che è fantastico, secondo me, l'abbinamento con il moscato, con la vostra cucina. È un bilanciamento tra dolce e acidità perfetto. Però visto che ti piace così tanto il moscato, te ne voglio far sentire una selezione più buona. E allora l'assaggiamo.
No way, 我很期待品这个 Can we do that? Oh, wow. Wow, so exciting.
This is Moscato d'autunno 2018.
Moscato d'autunno. Is this a legal word or is it just...
Con il nome Moscato d'autunno io identifico la selezione migliore di ogni vintage del Moscato.
So we're having the best of the best.
Sì, nella ricerca del migliore equilibrio, del balance, the best balance, il blend che a me piace di più di ogni annata diventa Moscato d'autunno.
Ok.
Ed è un'unica fermentazione normalmente imbottigliata ad aprile.
Oh, I look forward to it.
Piemonte Moscato
Oh,
d'autunno.
yes.
Enjoy.
Wow. Gosh, really, really fragrant. But I have a question. Why is this called Piemonte Moscato and not Moscato d'Asti?
Perché con la denominazione Piemonte Moscato io posso raccogliere l'uva prima di un certo periodo e dopo, per cui per comodità e per poter scegliere meglio l'epoca di raccolta uso questa denominazione.
Oh my gosh, the concentration of the fruit here on the palate is absolutely amazing.哇，挺有意思的，因为好多的，比如说我的朋友们或者我的学生们，他们都以为这些小甜水没有很大的质量的区别，但是我告诉你，这两款酒入口感觉是完全不一样的。这个是比较有活力的，有点漂亮的感觉，但是非常有芳香的，充满了这些葡萄味儿。但是这款酒对我来说，它还是一样的漂亮，但是它还保留一点严肃的感觉。你喝一口的时候，你马上可以感到好多好多的水果味儿，有各种各样的 lots of fruit here, beautiful fruit and quite a serious feeling to it.
This is the secret, è il segreto di questo vitigno, questo fruttato, questa aromaticità è molto forte, molto spiccata. This is the secret.
So I think this is wonderful to have these two different Moscatos. And even though they're coming from the same area, even though they're made in the same way, for me, they have very different feel. They have a very different mouthfeel.
Yes, ma è anche dovuto al fatto che stiamo assaggiando due vintage diversi, 2018-2019. E c'è anche la differenza del vintage. Comunque sono sfumature marcate sempre tutti gli anni.
Okay. Well, I have to say, this has been a really wonderful eye-opener about Moscato. You know, in China, it's very, very popular. People love it. But to have this quality is a very rare thing indeed. So I'd like to thank you so much, Paolo, for having us.
Thank you, you too. Thank you for your visit.
Wow, wow. After tasting those delicious Moscatos, Paolo insisted on showing me his winery where, as you will see, there's not a single oak barrel to be found. Why? Well, there's two reasons. Firstly, who would want to cover the fabulously fragrant Moscato with new oak flavors? But secondly, it's the winemaking. They need to take the fresh, beautiful grape juice and chill it until they want to make the wine. And then they start fermenting, and when the moment is right, they put pressure on it. Why? To force the carbon dioxide from the fermentation back into the wine, creating those fabulously frothy bubbles that make Moscato d'Asti so fantastic. So, this is the magic.
Sì, qui abbiamo il mosto, la base, il succo da cui ricaviamo il nostro moscato. È mantenuto a -2 di temperatura, non si ossida e adesso te lo faccio assaggiare.
Oh, it really is the freshness.
Please.
Thank you.
Questo è soltanto uva spremuta, illimpidita e tenuta a -2 di temperatura. Enjoy.
I will, thank you. It's so sweet.
Like the grape.
It's Wonderful. Fermentation tanks.
Yes. Questo è l'autoclave dove facciamo la fermentazione, dove si produce durante la fermentazione molta anidride carbonica che esce da questa valvola in questo modo.
Wow!
Quando raggiungiamo un equilibrio ideale tra lo zucchero residuo che i lieviti consumano e l'alcol che si sta formando durante la fermentazione, interrompiamo col freddo e si raggiunge l'equilibrio ideale. E poi, ecco, questo è il vino che ha appena finito la fermentazione.
Wow! That is amazing! Look at that! It's bubbles everywhere!
Un'esplosione di bollicine.
Bubbles, bubbles,
Bubbles.
bubbles, bubbles! Yay! I hope you've enjoyed this exploration into the diversity of Piemonte. But believe it or not, I could keep going all day with dry whites like the fabulously aromatic Arnese or the steely and mineral Gavi and juicy reds like Dolcetto. But nevertheless, Barolo is the king. And in the next episode, we'll dive deep into Barolo and discover more about its past, its present, and maybe its future.